Did you know that the Vietnam War, a conflict that would shape global politics for decades, began as a struggle for independence? Picture this, it's the early 20th century, and Vietnam is under the colonial rule of France. The Vietnamese people long for sovereignty, yearning to break free from the chains of foreign domination. Out of this yearning, nationalist movements begin to rise like sparks of hope in the darkness. One of the most significant of these is the Viet Minh, led by a charismatic and determined leader, Ho Chi Minh. Ho Chi Minh, a man whose name would soon echo through the halls of history, rallies his compatriots with a dream of a free and independent Vietnam. Now, fast forward to the mid-20th century. The world has just witnessed the horrors of the Second World War, and the global landscape is shifting. The Geneva Accords of 1954, a series of agreements intended to restore peace in Indochina, result in the division of Vietnam into North and South. The North, under Ho Chi Minh, is to follow a communist model, drawing the attention of the Soviet Union and China. Meanwhile, the South, with a government more amenable to Western ideologies, attracts the interest of the United States. The division is meant to be temporary, with nationwide elections planned for 2 years later. But as the elections approach, the South's leader, Ngo Dinh Diem, refuses to participate, fearing a communist victory. Tensions escalate, and the division hardens. The two Vietnams, like siblings turned rivals, grow further apart. Thus, the stage was set for a conflict that would engulf not only Vietnam but also the world's superpowers. A war was brewing, a war that would leave an indelible mark on history and continue to shape global politics for decades to come. But what lured the United States into this far-off conflict, you might ask? To understand this, we need to travel back to the height of the Cold War, a time when the world was divided between the forces of capitalism and communism. The United States, a bastion of capitalism, feared that if one country fell to communism, neighboring countries would follow. This was known as the domino theory. Now, Vietnam was in a precarious position, split between the communist North and the democratic South. The United States saw Vietnam as a domino teetering on the brink. They believed that if Vietnam fell to communism, the rest of Southeast Asia might follow, potentially even threatening the security of Australia and New Zealand. So, the stakes were high. Then came the Gulf of Tonkin incident in 1964. 2 U.S. Navy destroyers were allegedly attacked by North Vietnamese torpedo boats in international waters. Whether these attacks actually happened or not is still debated today. However, at the time, it was just the justification Washington needed. In response, the U.S. Congress passed the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution, which gave President Lyndon B. Johnson the authority to assist any Southeast Asian country threatened by communist aggression. The resolution essentially handed the president a blank check and marked a significant escalation in America's involvement in Vietnam. The U.S. started by sending advisors and support, but by 1965, American combat troops were fighting in the jungles and rice paddies of Vietnam. The U.S. was no longer just a supporter in the conflict. It had become a full-fledged participant. The United States entered the war with a sense of confidence, a belief that its superior military might could quickly crush the communist forces. But, as we'll see, this confidence would soon be tested. The Vietnam War would prove to be a quagmire that the U.S. found difficult to navigate. And so, America found itself entangled in a war halfway across the world. Little did they know this war would leave an indelible mark on the nation's history. The Vietnam War was not just a political and military conflict, it was a human tragedy. The toll of the Vietnam War on American soldiers was immense. More than 58,000 lives were lost, a number that still resonates with a heavy heart today. Each one of these men and women had their own stories, dreams, and families. Their loss was not just a statistic but a profound human tragedy, felt deeply by loved ones left behind. Beyond the fatalities, the war left an indelible mark on those who returned home. Nearly 300,000 soldiers were wounded, many with injuries that would impact their lives forever. The war didn't end when they left Vietnam. For many, it continued in their minds as they grappled with post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, a condition that was only beginning to be understood and treated. The issue of prisoners of war, or POWs, was another dark chapter in this conflict. Over 700 American servicemen were captured and held in grueling conditions, with their fate uncertain. Many were tortured, and their captivity lasted for years, leaving deep psychological wounds. The war also witnessed horrific incidents like the My Lai massacre, where American soldiers killed hundreds of Vietnamese civilians, shattering the trust between the military and the Vietnamese people. This incident sparked outrage and further divided public opinion back home. Not only did the war impact the soldiers and the Vietnamese, but it also scarred the environment. The use of defoliants, most notoriously Agent Orange, resulted in long-term ecological damage and health issues for both American veterans and the Vietnamese population. The consequences of this chemical warfare are still being felt today, as successive generations grapple with birth defects and cancer. The Vietnam War was a costly endeavor, not only in terms of finances but more importantly in human lives and suffering. Its impact was far-reaching, affecting not just those who fought but also their families, the Vietnamese people, and the environment. The Vietnam War left scars that are still healing today. After years of fighting and loss, the end of the Vietnam War finally came. It was January of 1973 when the Paris Peace Accords were signed. This agreement promised to bring about a cessation of hostilities and the withdrawal of U.S. troops. However, peace was far from immediate. 2 years later, Saigon, the capital of South Vietnam, fell to the North Vietnamese troops. This marked the official end of the war, a conflict that had spanned over 2 decades. The aftermath of the war was profound, both for Vietnam and the United States. For Vietnam, the war left the country physically and economically devastated. The conflict caused widespread destruction, with countless villages, cities, and infrastructure reduced to rubble. The task of rebuilding was monumental. However, despite these challenges, Vietnam has since made remarkable strides towards recovery and development. On the other side of the world, the United States was grappling with its own aftermath. The Vietnam War had been an unpopular and divisive conflict. It left deep scars on the American psyche, leading to a period of national introspection and a re-evaluation of the country's role on the global stage. Yet, amidst this introspection came a poignant symbol of remembrance and healing: the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. Unveiled in 1982, the memorial serves as a stark reminder of the human cost of war. Inscribed on its black granite walls are the names of the more than 58,000 American service members who lost their lives in Vietnam. The end of the Vietnam War marked a turning point in history. It was a conflict that redefined the dynamics of power, changed the course of nations, and left indelible marks on countless lives. Though the war ended, its effects continue to reverberate. The echoes of this conflict remind us of the costs of war, the value of peace, and the resilience of the human spirit in the face of adversity. While Vietnam was embroiled in war, the world around it was changing. This statement rings true as we delve into the global context of the Vietnam War era, a time marked by substantial shifts in societal, political, and technological landscapes. Almost concurrently with the Vietnam War, America was experiencing what we now call the Civil Rights Movement. This social revolution fought for the rights of African Americans who had been subjugated to racial discrimination and prejudice for centuries. Icons like Martin Luther King Jr. and Rosa Parks emerged, becoming symbols of resilience and hope in the face of adversity. The movement's influence stretched beyond the borders of the United States, sending ripples of change worldwide. Meanwhile, the space race was in full swing. The United States and the Soviet Union were locked in a fierce competition for superior technological prowess and cosmic exploration. The world watched in awe as humanity's footprint extended beyond the confines of Earth. In 1969, when the Vietnam War was nearing its end, mankind witnessed one of the most remarkable achievements in human history: the Apollo 11 moon landing. It was a giant leap, not just for a nation, but for all of humanity. Simultaneously, the world held its breath during the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962. The United States and the Soviet Union stood on the precipice of nuclear war, with the entire globe caught in the crossfire. This 13-day standoff marked the peak of the Cold War tensions and served as a stark reminder of the potential catastrophe that could ensue from unchecked aggression and escalation. These global events, among others, were the backdrop against which the Vietnam War was fought. They demonstrated the interconnectedness of world events and how the ripple effects of actions in one part of the globe could be felt across oceans. The Vietnam War was not an isolated event, but part of a larger global narrative. It was a piece of a complex puzzle that was the mid-20th century, a time of significant change, progress, and conflict that shaped the world we know today. Decades have passed since the end of the Vietnam War, Where does Vietnam stand with the United States today? In the years following the conflict, the relationship between the US and Vietnam was understandably strained. However, since the formal normalization of diplomatic relations in 1995, the two nations have made significant strides towards a robust and mutually beneficial partnership. Economically, the US and Vietnam have become important trading partners. The United States is one of the largest importers of Vietnamese goods, including textiles, footwear, and seafood, while American businesses have made substantial investments in Vietnam's burgeoning economy. In fact, just last year, bilateral trade between the two nations surpassed $60 billion, a testament to their growing economic interdependence. Politically, the US and Vietnam have forged a strong bond based on shared strategic interests. While the nations may not always see eye to eye on every issue, they have found common ground on matters such as maritime security and the peaceful resolution of disputes in the South China Sea. This cooperation in the political arena serves as a stark contrast to the adversarial relationship of their past. Culturally, the exchange has been no less significant. Vietnamese students are among the largest groups of international students in the US, while American culture, from music to movies, is increasingly popular in Vietnam. This cultural exchange, facilitated by travel and technology, has played a crucial role in fostering understanding and friendship between the two nations. The journey from conflict to cooperation has not been easy, nor has it been quick. It's been a long and complex path, marked by moments of tension, reconciliation, and growth. But the relationship between Vietnam and the US today serves as a testament to the power of diplomacy, mutual respect, and shared interests. From war to partnership, the relationship between Vietnam and the US has come a long way. The Vietnam War, a chapter of history that continues to shape our world. A conflict that began as a struggle for independence soon escalated into a full-blown war, pulling the United States into its vortex. The reasons for America's involvement were complex, rooted in a desire to contain the spread of communism during the height of the Cold War. The toll was immense, with over 58,000 American soldiers making the ultimate sacrifice, their lives lost in a foreign land. Countless others returned home, forever changed by their experiences, while some remained, their fate unknown, prisoners of a brutal conflict. The war spanned over 2 decades, its echoes reverberating through the world, influencing global politics and shaping national identities. And when the last American soldier finally left Vietnam, the world was a different place. The war had changed us, but it also changed Vietnam, a country left to pick up the pieces of a shattered nation. Today, the relationship between Vietnam and the United States is a testament to the power of diplomacy and reconciliation. From adversaries to allies, the journey has been a long one, marked by a shared desire to heal old wounds and forge a new future. But as we look back on this chapter of our history, we must remember its lessons. For in the words of philosopher George Santayana, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. The Vietnam War serves as a stark reminder of the cost of conflict, the importance of diplomacy, and the resilience of the human spirit. This journey through history serves not just as a recollection but also as a reminder to strive for peace, to learn from our past, and to work towards a future where such conflicts are a thing of the past. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a thumbs up and share. We strive to bring you videos we think you will enjoy about our Savior Jesus Christ and American history. Become a part of our family and subscribe to our channel. May God bless you and all your endeavors. Thank you for watching.